Hey guys, how's it going? You know what I would never ever do? Take a Sharpie or a pen to a label of any of my games. But today we are looking at Pocket Bomberman, an early childhood present from our mom. Released in '98, Pocket Bomberman was a later addition to our extremely modest but fun-filled family Game Boy collection. Many memories of these games being passed between siblings and myself in the backseat of our van. And it's one of those games that I absolutely remember playing quite a bit, whether it was super early on the road or during a red-eye flight. Taking what we know as classic Bomberman action on the go makes so much sense, but this game was different. It wasn't all about the top-down perspective, it was about platforming, and a lot of it. As far as the cape and sword go, those are pointless. They have absolutely nothing to do with the adventure at all. Sometimes Bomberman just got themed a certain way, like the other original Game Boy game, Bomberman GB, where he looks like a cowboy, but it plays like a typical top-down Bomberman. But not this one. They even had a jump game mode at the start, where Bomberman simply will not stop jumping and you need to climb vertically and safely through its few checkpoints. A side-scrolling perspective with jumping is definitely a different take on the tried-and-true Bomberman formula. But they made what I would consider some really interesting and smart decisions to make it work really well. For example, although Bomberman handles the platforming with gravity in mind, just as you'd expect, the bombs actually stay wherever you lay them. While a lot of enemies are grounded to start, as you advance through the game's 5 worlds, you'll find that it is less and less the case since airborne enemies can be that much trickier to deal with. This is where your skills of timing and placement of your bombs in the air is tested regularly, but that's only the beginning. With these parameters in mind, you can also and will need to use your bombs to assist with you ascending with your platforming, literally using a ticking time bomb as your stepping stool. You can imagine how many accidental deaths this can result in as you try to get a feel for everything. But the game is pretty quick and persistent when lending its helping hand, such as your typical +1 to your bomb count and +1 fire that adds just a bit more to your explosive range, but also in the form of hearts that serve as an extra hit. You can only have one of these at a time. There are also protective vests that can give you invulnerability for a solid 15 to 20 seconds. Penetration bombs can blow through multiple objects at a time. Remote control bombs that you activate with the select button, which you'll probably use your left thumb for, making for busier control and works well. But even more of a different experience is how about the stages where you pick up a wing power that opens everything up. I mean, how awesome is this? It's like you're swimming in the air. It's almost like you're using a Game Shark as opposed to an actual in-game power-up. They implement many level designs really well around it too, but it's an example of one power-up that does not carry over between the stages, which I can understand. Even with all of this assistance, Pocket Bomberman does bring some decent, and before long, real challenge. Honestly. Even with its unlimited continues that graciously allow you to start right back on the exact level that you died on. But, as many Bomberman players remember, game overs are when you start back up with minimum power and one bomb at a time, so it can be pretty tough to get momentum going again and actually beat the later levels with their airborne enemies that take 2 hits to kill. As far as how the game is played, we have 5 themed worlds that Bomberman needs to visit in order to collect the precious stones and save the world, or something like that. Forest, ocean, wind, cloud, and evil. It's screens like this that help remind me of just how great and nostalgic many Game Boy soundtracks are. Which gets me even more excited to look at and admire many more games of this era. I also really admire the joyfully themed illustrations used between the different worlds. And even on the pause screen. How nice and relaxing is that? Like I was saying earlier, getting through this game is no small task, since losing your power-ups later can really hurt your chances. In fact, I never even beat this game until somewhat recently. In general, I can tell you that many of the levels, especially when you know what you're doing, really aren't that bad until the last world. But the end of the world bosses also bring more and more heat as well. Honestly, I wouldn't even tell you that any of them are downright easy, especially if you don't have the remote bomb power-up. This game also quickly and cleverly gets rid of an exploitive advantage right after its first boss, Torrent, unleashing its caterpillar minions. With him you could lay a bomb in the place he goes back to every time he's hit. But by the second world's boss, Connie Bubbler, they made sure to protect this gigantic crab with a specifically placed platform, meaning you really need to work to get those hits in. Plus, these guys just get a bit more health and a bit more dangerous as you get through the game. For the third world boss, Terrastone, the monster from the cover art, you really have to be careful, especially if and when you go at this between game overs, needing to power up while trying to stay safe as the fight is going. His movement is a bit different than the others, definitely moves around pretty consistently in a straight diagonal line, somewhat bouncing off the walls in a predictable way, but that doesn't stop him from being a pretty big pain. But not as big of a pain as the Death Spider of Cloud World. The minions of all of these guys can be pretty bad, yet they are just a bit more difficult to deal with each time, as they should be of course. This thing likes to position itself above you and comes right down. Although you can kind of get a feel for how to stay pretty safe from that, the boss's movement can always make it feel tough to effectively land your explosions. And this time, it just requires more effort than before. But after enough times of getting sent to the game over screen and learning along the way, we finally get to the world that always held me back from finishing the game growing up. If you were able to get here with a remote bomb power-up and hold on to it, that would be one thing. It would make a world of difference. But things simply happen, and it can very well be gone before you know it. Then you're out here tackling the toughest obstacles and enemies with, at first, barely any feasible way to take them out at all. But Pocket Bomberman is always very fair with upgrades on every single level, and there are even a few hearts on the last world too. They did a really nice job making it all challenging, but also had some really cool level designs that really pushes you to be accurate and smart with your control, like providing the flying power-up on its level 1, or as the game calls it, Area 1, with them allowing you to search for bomb power-ups, the flying power, an invincibility vest, speed skates, a time stop, and a heart. Lots of really helpful things to use if you can take the time to look, which is definitely worth it. The themes for each world make enough sense and are pretty funny, while evil apparently just consists of cobras, fire, gambling, and these dang little skeleton pterodactyls. These guys are the worst. As far as how this playthrough was going, it was alright. It took me a little under an hour to get this far. But ending at this point would simply be unacceptable, so it's time to go into grind mode and stay relentless until we reach the final battle. Final boss time, and my goodness, is this guy a problem. Babylon can rapidly throw even more projectiles that are pretty tough to avoid, with some coming out quickly in 4 diagonal lines, as many as the other bosses do, but also have some that weave up, down, left, right, all over the place to get to you. Died plenty of times once I got here. Eventually, you can somewhat anticipate or at least safely guess where he's going to appear, and although he starts to disappear quicker as you hit him more, an early lay in a few spots before he shows up again can at least be somewhat counted on. Overall, it's a really awesome take on Bomberman, and with all of its different strategies like the platforming and using your bombs to scale upward, it's a really cool take on the series. Definitely still fun playing today. Lastly, fun fact, you know what other completely out of the box Bomberman game came out back in 1998?